ॐ सहना भवतु सहनो भुनक्तु सह वीरं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः।
Namaskar and good afternoon to all of you. When I entered the room, I found it, I couldn't recognize it. Why? Because suddenly all the blinds are up. मैं इनको कहता कहता रह गया कि यार blind up करे करो because we have a lovely view outside. So suddenly you find this whole space. So I think जब हमारे दिमाग के भी पर्दे उठते हैं तो एक बहुत बड़ा एक fresh air आती है. And this is exactly how I'm feeling. So who took this initiative today? Who took this initiative? Any? हाँ? नहीं किसने उठाए ये पर्दे? ओ अच्छा आज वो भूल गए नीचे डालना. I see. I thought that they had. नहीं थोड़ा बहुत होना चाहिए. I think as you can see it's a lovely view outside. So thank you very much for coming to this edition of the Vimarsh talk. I can see all the hardcore audiences here, and they always come to our variety of talks that you have held over the years. We have also come out with some books. I think any of you wish to collect a book, a collation of some of these talks, not all, but some of these. In fact, 2 books we brought out, so you could very well have it. So let us know our staff and they will provide you those books. कुछ किताब actually बाहर रखवा भी देना, and maybe Kishan, अगर किताबें कुछ पढ़ी हो तो रखवा देना, and otherwise we can send it to them. So welcome to yet another edition of Vimarsh talk, and this time it's by Lieutenant General A.K. Singh ji. He's going to talk to us on a very interesting topic, and this on your screen: nation's strategic thought, perspectives from ancient India. And nobody could be better than him to speak on this topic. Firstly, he has just retired from a very senior position in the Indian Armed Forces, so nobody understands nation security better than him. And of course, there are others here. But he was dealing with these issues for a very long time. But also because he is deeply immersed into Indian thought and culture. And I think you are a PhD in, yeah, he is a PhD on these issues. So there are very few people like him. And probably he comes to this subject more from the ancient Indian perspective than from the NDA. At first you learn in the NDA what you did and then you impose perspectives. So that's what I found when I discussed these matters with him. So thank you very much, sir, for accepting our invitation. But let me very briefly introduce our distinguished speaker. Of course, he has a very long bio and CV, but I'll just read a few of the points. General Ajai Kumar Singh is Param Vishisht Seva Medal, Ati Vishisht Seva Medal, Yuddha Seva Medal, Sena Medal, Vishisht Seva Medal. Has retired from active service with his last appointment as the General Officer Commanding in Chief, Southern Command of Indian Army. He was in this position till 30th June 2024. He was commissioned into the 7th Battalion of the 11 Gorkha Rifles in December 1984. He has served as a company commander in counter-insurgency operations in Kashmir and also in Manipur. He commanded 1st Battalion of the 11 Gorkha as part of a strike corps in Dehradun and later on the line of control. He subsequently commanded a brigade in the Run of Kutch in Gujarat and a counter-insurgency force in North Kashmir, and later the 33 Corps along the northern borders. So he has a very distinguished record. In addition, he has served in staff appointments as Director Military Operations Branch, Deputy Director General Discipline and Vigilance, Additional Director General of Military Operations, and Director General of Operations Logistics and Strategic Move Branch at the Army Headquarters. He is an avid mountaineer and has scaled the challenging Mount Rathong Peak, 22,000 feet. So friends, I met General Ajay Kumar a few months ago at a seminar in Pune. And I was deeply impressed by his deep knowledge about Indian philosophy, religion, and culture. And what was interesting to me was that in a gathering of senior, serving, and retired military officials, diplomats, and media persona, that means a gathering full of skeptics, General Singh emphasized in forceful and convincing manner the importance of Indian ancient thinking in India's strategic thought. So a lot of us talk about it, but probably not with that conviction, thoda dar ke, thoda diffidence. But here was one general who I think spoke very forcefully, and that was very heartening. India is a civilization with rich traditions in philosophy, statecraft, science, technology, and military thinking. Whether we know it or we don't know it, consciously that is, our thinking and actions are unconsciously influenced by the accumulated ancient wisdom and the learnings of the past. You cannot escape it. 5,000 years of culture, etc. You can't escape it. So we are, always at all in our action, we are influenced by these. So Bhagavad Gita, Mahabharata, Ramayana, and many others have deeply influenced our values, thought, and action. And at the same time, being a very large, long, unbroken civilization exposed to the world, we have also absorbed influences from across the world. At the same time, we also contributed significantly to world thought and culture. Now, there is an ongoing debate in India, which was started in the 90s by George Tenem, and many of you would have heard that name, an American analyst who wrote a monograph. He used to work for the Rand Corporation, and he wrote a monograph, in my view, a damning monograph, in which he said that India lacks culture of strategic thinking. And he gave some arguments, reasons, etc. Basically, he said that आप सोच नहीं सकते हैं, आप जाके आपकी कोई एक वो क्या कहते हैं उसे, forgetting the English word now, कोई प्लान नहीं है कि आप अपना इन्फ्लुएंस कैसे बढ़ाएं वगैरह, इस तरह से उसने कहा. Look at our strategic thinking of the US, etc. How their think tanks all the time think, something like that, he said. So many Western analysts and many of our own ilk also took this argument and started supporting him. And he said, हाँ भाई, Indian culture तो thinking है नहीं. We don't have that. And they narrated several of our weaknesses, etc. And probably rightly so also. I mean, many of these things were. So people more or less pronounced that India lacks strategic culture. Then there was another analyst, and his name was, first name I'm forgetting, Jones, R.W. Jones. R.W. Jones in 2007, and he was also from Rand Corporation. He just reversed the argument, and he says India has a deep philosophical thought, etc. How can you say that? So essentially, two views came out, and this has now been discussed, and practically every scholar knows, and they start their monographs quoting these two. But I think one good thing that is happening is that in recent years, now Indian experts are now pushing back. So Indian young scholars, we in the VIF and so many others, and Neeraji here, and she has brought a lot of people here. We have held many seminars of this kind, and we feel that there is a very, very strong Indian thinking, strategic thinking. But only thing is, इसको उभार के लाना है, इसको document करना है, and so that is the effort which is going on. It will take some time before that the argument because the Western media is still very strong, the Western ecosystem is still very strong. But I think what has happened in the last 10 years is that Prime Minister Modi is now at the forefront of projecting Indian thought and culture. So he's come out with several ideas. He came out with the theme of Vasudev Kutumbakam, a very bold theme and bold step, I must say, at the global forum of G20 to put the overarching theme as Vasudev Kutumbakam. It was a very bold step. And then now talking about Vishwabandhu and Vishwamitra, etc. So moment you use these words, the terminology, you start looking at what is this Vishwamitra. So people are now going into their own history, culture, etc., and trying to understand this. So this is still that process which is on. So now Vasudev Kutumbakam is an acknowledged framework for India's foreign policy. And he has spoken, the Prime Minister has spoken with conviction and confidence about India's civilizational ethos at so many international fora. And he often and regularly, in fact, quotes from the Indian wisdom to make the point about the global welfare, the welfare of the humanity, and indeed all creation, the emphasis which is there, the welfare of creation in our own philosophy. So he speaks about it, and now a lot of young. In fact, this morning only, one of our a lady who used to work here as an intern, now she is somewhere as a lecturer. She sent me a paper she has written on India as a civilization state, and all Gurumurthy ji's ideas, etc., are reflected in that. So I think this trend is now beginning, and this is very important that we should continue with that. And of course, we have to do a deep study of these things and an objective study of these things, because there is so much to say. So we need to discuss this in an objective and rigorous manner, how the rich treasure of norms and values in our ancient thinking can help us navigate the modern world with its turbulence and uncertainty. I think one difference which is now and earlier was, it's not that people did not know about Indian culture. There have been very learned thinkers, they talked about Indian philosophy and so on. But you look at them, they didn't relate to the modern world. They didn't relate to the wars which are going on. They didn't relate to the crises that we are facing. So we said we had a very rich tradition. This is what was written in Bhagavad Gita, this is what is written in Mahabharata, etc. But it remained there. So you had the Sanskrit departments in the various universities, excellent scholars, but they would look only from the linguistic point of view. They would not relate it to the Mahabharata and so on, and the philosophy and strategy, etc. This is now beginning to change, and now we have a multidisciplinary approach to national security, to foreign policy, how we look at the world. And here, I think the contribution of the Indian thought and culture will be very important. And what are the 2 or 3 points which are so important, which I think we should pick up and which we should discuss? And one is this overwhelming desire, despite the wars that we fought, overwhelming desire for human welfare, for peace, and peace not of just human beings, but also in nature. So I think that's something which appeals to people, and certainly when the world is so conflicted. This is desire for universal peace. Is it a call for pacifism? That will be, I think, a foolish reading of that. Okay, peace का बोलोगे तो आप pacifist हो जाओगे. In fact, Ramayana and Mahabharata are all about wars only. So I think we have to make these points clear. And the most important, the single most important point which comes out in all this is that of dharma. So adherence to dharma. Without dharma, there is no Indian culture. So whatever way you define dharma, whichever way, there is a whole discussion about the dharma. But whether it is Ramayana, whether it is Mahabharata or anybody else, or in a personal life, वो धर्म और अधर्म, ये दो चीजों का बहुत बड़ा importance है. And I think this is different from the just war of the Christians and so on. It's different because the concept of dharma itself is so breadth or so wide. So I think adherence to dharma, keeping in mind the requirements of the society, the nation, and the world is important. And that's what a couple of days ago, the UNGA adopted a global pact for future. All the leaders were there, and they have adopted a global pact for future and a declaration for future generation. And the world leaders, it was a mea culpa. Sorry, madam teacher, I did not do my homework properly. That's why these problems are there. In fact, they say that a lot of the problems that today are there in the world are because of some of them are due to the wrong choices that we made. It is mentioned in that. This is a remarkable admission on the part of the leaders. But then there is also reiteration कि भाई हम अब ठीक करेंगे, अगला homework जो है हम ठीक ठाक करके लाएंगे. So this is the spirit in which that has been written. I mean, I'm not denigrating them because the problems are huge. Nobody has a complete solution. But now there is realization. But in this whole churning which is taking place in the world, I think Indian thought and culture can make a contribution. But for that, we have to make an effort. People will not go कि भाई आपके पास कोई idea है, आपके पास idea है तो आप उसको discuss करो. So that's why I think these discussions are very important. So the world leaders have committed themselves to transforming global governance, strengthening international cooperation, and maintaining international peace and security. Indian strategic thinking, rooted in the dharmic traditions, can contribute towards making the world a better place. And I think we would definitely gain from what you have to say, what offers insights you have to offer. So I request you now to kindly pick up.
Thank you, sir. I think this is my first time. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure, it's a privilege to be here, standing on the podium. Vivekananda International Foundation, it's a name. It's one of the foremost think tank of India, and it's a pleasure to be here. And such large gathering at a short notice and at a time. Post lunch is a challenging time. So, and the subject is not easy. It's a complex subject. It's a complex subject. I'll come to it. I have tried to make it as simple as possible. And last 20-25 days, I have been at it. Not that I've not been at it earlier. This is a subject which is very close to my heart. But spirituality is a subject that's close to my heart. I have linked both the spirituality and the strategic culture. You will find that there is an underlying link in both these, and I will establish the link. I had the option of just speaking extempore, in which I would have spoken generally, and it would have left an imprint. But I thought that I will back it up with a lot of facts and figures, so that by the end of it, once you go back, you have something really tangible to gain. So that is why I have slides. Normally, more often than not, I normally speak extempore, but this subject I hold very dear to my heart. And I think that this is a start point. This is a start point from where we need to take off. So firstly, thank you, sir, Dr. Arvind Gupta, for giving me this wonderful opportunity and seeing and talking a lot of very gracious words about me. Initially, when this subject was given to me, the subject was India's strategic thought, perspectives from the armed forces. So that was the link. And I chose to expand it to include that it is nation's strategic culture, perspectives from ancient India. And once I did that, after some time when I started collating the data and reading books connected with that, I realized that I've touched a hornet's nest, because there is so much, and as I come back to subsequently, you'll realize that our spiritual thought is so profound. We are not a civilization of one book. We are a civilization of not even library. We are a civilization of libraries, which when burned took months to burn. That is what our civilization is. Not easy to encapsulate in just about 40 minutes. But as I delved deeper into it, I realized, it's not a hornet's nest. It is a beehive. It is a beehive, and I found a lot of nectar. I found a lot of honey, and it really sweetened my taste. And at the end of 40 minutes, I sincerely hope that it sweetens the taste of each and everyone who has come here and is attending, because they say the best gift that you can give to anybody is the gift of time. So thank you, each and everyone, for giving the wonderful gift of time. I start with this, and I think this quote is extremely important and extremely relevant. And this quote is the one which got me thinking that I must talk about the Indian strategic culture and also talk about the perspectives from ancient India. And if you read the quote, Each nation has a destiny to fulfill. Each nation has a message to deliver. Each nation has a mission to accomplish. Therefore, from the very start, mark the word, he says, from the very start, not from now, from past, we must have to understand the mission of our own race, the destiny it has to fulfill, the place it has to occupy in the march of nations, and the note which it has to contribute to the harmony of races. I think this is extremely important, coming straight from one of our foremost thinker and icon, Swami Vivekanand, and this is what got me thinking. And I realized today, what is it that we all need? I think what we need is peace, progress, prosperity. But when you look around the world, what do we have? We have conflict, we have instability, we have anarchy, we have poverty. We are nearly heading towards an ecological disaster. So this is what we have. What is it that we can do at this point of time? What is happening is because of a dominant strategic culture, which we call it as a Western strategic culture. I think we are reaping the dividend or the collateral of that particular adherence to that particular strategic culture. And when I come to the contours of our own strategic culture, you will realize the magnitude and the profoundness with which, which our own Prime Minister says in the terms of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. When India grows, it is not only that India grows, it will be an all-inclusive growth. That all the nation, the neighborhood will grow. We will not grow at the cost of anybody. We will grow on our own merit, and we will make sure that our neighbors and the world at large also grows. That's most important part of our strategic culture. This is the manner in which I have fashioned. So I will very briefly touch upon what is a strategic culture, a little bit of a theory. Then I'll come to, does India have a strategic culture? Because as I think brought out very clearly by Dr. Arvind Gupta, that there is a little bit of a confusion which has been created. But before I even answer that, I'll answer a moot question. Did India exist as a nation? A lot of people even point a finger to that did we exist as a nation? And I will talk even about that. Then I will give a very brief glimpse on the ancient Indian knowledge, very brief. And then from this ancient Indian knowledge, I will cull out the core concepts of the strategic culture. And finally, I intend concluding the talk. So coming back to the theoretical aspects of the strategic culture, so it could be defined as a concept in international relations that refers to shared ideas, values, and behaviors that influence a country's foreign policy, security policy, and its response to threat. This is a very basic example. But what all does it include? So what it includes is basically ideas and beliefs that it forms the collective identity. So what is it? What are the ideas and beliefs that shape up its collective identity? And the second is the values that influence how it evaluates its interest. And that is most important. The third is the patterns of behavior and habits that influence how it responds to the threats. And then is the norms as to how it conducts its business. And if we come to the right side, you'll realize that culture is the one which gives the guiding path, which is attendant with values, practice, and behaviors. And the strategy is the one which is the driving path. And that comes attendant with the goals, objectives, and activities. Having seen this term itself, strategic culture, was coined by Jack Snyder in 1977. This was the first time this term was used in context of, again, a paper submitted to the RAND Corporation, the Soviet strategic culture, implications for limited nuclear strike options. So while it talked of the strategic culture, but the scope was very limited. Over a period of time, the term strategic culture has got wider connotations. And these wider connotations now refers to and include the nation's traditions, the values, and the attitudes, the pattern of behavior, the habits, the symbols, achievements, the ways of adapting, and finally, how a nation solves its problems. So finally, the nation's strategic culture primarily flows from geography, resources, history, experience, society, and political structures of a country. And it is inferred and it is also influenced by shared belief, modes of behavior, assumptions, and common experiences. All this forms an edifice primarily, and they are a means of achieving the security objectives. Having just briefly touched upon the theoretical aspects of the strategic culture, we come to, does India have a strategic culture? And as promised, before we answer that, let's answer whether India existed as a nation. So what is a nation? A nation is a shared consciousness which is embodied in beliefs, myths, and symbols. The territorial space is extremely important. Unless and until you have a concept of territorial space, you cannot have, it will be very difficult to have a concept of cultural oneness that derives from the territorial space. And just before we came here, I was talking to Sir, and we realized that in India, ek inch bhumi nahi gawayenge. That is very important. Somewhere else people may lose and gain territory. But when it comes to us, territory is extremely important to us. Extremely important to us. And this complete concept primarily leads to the concept of home, family, mother, and motherland. There are four important elements of a nation, and these are community, territory, history, and a sense of identity. I think the sense of identity is extremely important because the sense of identity gives you the path that you have to follow and you have to adhere for progress. Now, India always, not from now, and not even when the British left, but since ancient times, since prehistory, India satisfies all these criteria to qualify as a nation. But our concept of nation is different. I think this is the most important. This is the most important. It's a territorial concept. It is also not an ethnic concept. The Europes and all is an ethnic concept. You have Slav, you have Serbians, you have Irish, you have Scottish people, and they are fighting for their own this thing. On ethnicity, we have not fought. So this is an important part. And in the ancient scriptures, if you nowadays, this is the Pitra Paksh. So all of us do tarpan and we do a lot of puja. So whenever you have a puja, that initial part is Jambu Dvipe Bharat Varshe. That is the word that comes. So this Jambu Dvip Bharat Varsh. This is not today. This is mentioned. This I am taking. That prayer is from Atharva Ved. Atharva Ved, which is written nearly thousands of years before. That says Bharat Varsh. And in the Atharva Ved itself and in our Purans, it is mentioned as Bharat Varsh, territory. And I think most of you possibly may not understand what does Bharat, everyone knows, but what is that word Varsh? What does it indicate? The Varsh indicates a separation of the earth, which is separated by a mountainous range. So Bharat Varsh is one which is separated by the Himalayan from the rest of the world. So right from the Himalayan to Himalayas to the seas, that is where Bharatvarsh exists, and that is what is the Bharatvarsh. But Jambu Dweep is also known as the land of jamun trees. I'll come to subsequently to reinforce this. Strabo, who was a historian who came with Alexander the Great, in his book Indica, he has mentioned that India is a rhomboid in shape. It is bounded by Indus to the west, mountains to the north, and seas on its east and on its south. Indica also quotes two sadhus who tell him and give him the exact dimension of its west and the east coast. Later, when the Britishers measured it, they found that exact dimension, nearly correct to just a difference of only 30 kilometers, 30 kilometers. So 2,400 years back, let alone not even anybody, our own sadhus knew, what is our, maritime boundary to nearly an accuracy of 30 kilometers. So the concept of India has been in existence since ancient times. It's a cultural concept, like I said. It's not a political concept. Political unity has not been at the base. You could exist, as a different political entity, but you had one culture and you were part of the Bharatvarsh. So politically also, it was divided into very well-developed components in district or janpas, so much so that Bihar, which was erstwhile known as Magad, the boundary of Magad remains unchanged till 2003. Now, having established and given my arguments that India existed as a nation since ancient times, let's explore into what kind of a strategic culture this nation has. So, as Dr. Arvind Gupta had pointed out, this confusion was caused by this gentleman, John Denham, in 1992 in a study which was commissioned by Pentagon, and it inferred that India has a relative lack of strategic thinking. And this is something which was taken by everybody, including our own intellectuals. And we kept saying that we lack strategic culture. But nobody has thought, everyone knows about the study done in 1992. But the study in 2006, done again by Rand Corporation, nobody talks about it because that was done by R.W. Jones, which clearly established that India possessed an original tradition of strategic thinking stemming from ancient texts like Arthashastra. He also actually put the start point at Arthashastra. Arthashastra of Chanakya is something that has been collated and compiled by what has gone beyond. I'm going to go back to Vedic civilization and point out the contours of the strategic culture right from there. So I'm not even going to start only from Arthashastra. So I think it was a false assumption that India lacked a strategic culture. Why is it necessary that we must establish that we have a strategic culture? I think today, when our polity has decided that by 15th August 2047, India would be a developed country and a reasonable power of concern to everybody in the world, and we will be sitting on the high table. It's very important for us today to reassert that we have a strong, vibrant, dynamic, and robust strategic culture. And by the end of it, this is what I intend establishing, this particular part. And second, we have already assumed the leadership of the Global South. We are speaking on their behalf. I think this is the right time to reassert this particular part. So the contours of the strategic culture is basically rooted in our civilizational metrics. It is shaped by our rich history, diverse culture, ancient civilization, and geographical location. It is a unique strategic culture which is reflecting our identity, our geographical interests, and security challenges. It is not a monolithic entity, but a composite one with different views on society and politics. Why society? Because we have always believed in a syncretic and pluralistic society. And a lot of people claim that, democracy is their concept. Democracy is an Indian concept. We had democracies, we had republic long time back. So it is not today. So I think it will be correct for me to say today and to announce that India is the oldest thriving democracy. It's complex, yet composite, coherent, and distinct. It is shaped by the teachings of mythological epics like Ramayana and Mahabharata. There is a great divide between India and Bharat, which we all talk of. Even today, if any of you have heard of Narmada Yatra, and please carry out a Narmada Yatra, even till date, since times immemorial, Ramayana is being recited. It has been recited, I don't know, for 1,000 years without stoppage. Just go and take this thing. Today in India, most of the houses, Ramayana and Mahabharata is recited. It is just not a history. Ramayana and Mahabharata are actually a blueprint as to how must you live your life, what are your duties and what are your responsibilities, and how do you discharge those responsibilities. When there is an issue, when there is a problem, and when there is a challenge, it will give you answers to everything. What are the duties and responsibilities of a father, of a son, of a wife, of a husband, of a brother, of a sister, of a king? Everything is encapsulated in this. It was not for nothing that people said that you recite Ramayana and Mahabharata. Today, I have made sure that my daughter and my Bahu both are reciting Ramayana. Both are reciting. It is very, very important for us to go back to our roots, because this is where the culture gets formed. This is where the culture takes shape. It is tempered by values and education imbibed by the ancient Indian Vedic civilization. You cannot teach values and culture just like teaching values like moral science. No, sorry, it is not. They say a child doesn't have an ego till about 5 years. Most of the thing, whatever you want to shape, you can do it in the first 5 years. Right from when you conceive, how you conceive in the womb, and in first 5 years, the basic thing is made. That is when you have to focus on. After that, you may polish a little bit here and there, but the basic structure is absolutely done and dusted. And that is why it is extremely important. Values and education have to be done through a lot of things, which I'll come to subsequently. It is also enriched by statecraft with threads from Kautilya's Arthashastra, Tirukural, Pantantra, and Nitisar. And I have not restricted myself to North India. I have also gone to Tamil literature. I have studied Tirukural at length and quoted that how Chanakya's Arthashastra and the Tirukural have so much in common. So much in common. It has braved 200 years of repeated invasions from the time of Alexander the Great in 321 BC right up to the British times. And still, despite the invasions, the secular threads in the unity of the nation has stood firm and deeply ingrained. How come? What is the cause that we still survive as a civilization? Other civilizations have vanished. The other surviving civilization, the Chinese civilization, but I think they have lost absolute touch with their civilization. We are the only surviving civilization. You know, this anarchy which is there everywhere, we have the answers. By the end of this presentation, you will be convinced that this strategic thought that we have has answers to all the problems that the world faces today. So it is attributed to this 5,000-year-old time-tested spiritual system, which is based on dharma, arth, kam, and moksha. The idea of India embraces the Maha Upanishad's worldview of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. We don't talk about our own personal interest and even our own national interest. We talk of world interest, universal concepts. We have deep cultural ethos and values, which is symbolized in our national motto, Satyamev Jayate. The truth alone prevails. And spirituality is our greatest gift. A lot of people say yoga is our greatest gift, but we have to make a distinction between yoga and spirituality. Yoga is a vehicle to experience spirituality, but yoga is not spirituality. Spirituality is an all-encompassing world. It has got large number of. Yoga is again Ashtang Yoga. A lot of people will think yoga is only some postures, but it is Ashtang Yoga. It is Yam, Niyam, Asana, Pranayam, Pratyahar, Dharana, Dhyan, Samadhi. That is Ashtang Yoga. Absolutely the way in which it's like National Defense Academy. You send anybody to National Defense Academy, we will make him an officer. So yoga and the Ashtanga Yoga is a path through which the spiritual inculcation would be given to anybody who follows this eightfold path. And this forms the underpinnings of our Indian strategic culture. So I'll very briefly touch upon our ancient Indian knowledge. I know this is a little busy slide. I can't help it. Because I told you ours is not a civilization of one book. Ours is a civilization of libraries. There is so much that has been written. There is so much which has been destroyed. Yet there is so much that we even have today, which we have not even studied. We have studied it in bits and pieces, but we have not pieced it together. मोती बने हैं, लेकिन इन मोतियों को किसी ने अब तक एक माला में नहीं पिरोया. जिस दिन ये माला हो जाएगी, that day the strategic culture would be very clearly evident, not only to us, but to the rest of the world. So there is a two big divisions that we have. The Shruti. Shruti is that which is heard, and the Smriti, that which is remembered. So in the Shruti is something that the Rishi Munis, when they did meditation, this is the direct knowledge. So they say this is not human knowledge. This is the direct knowledge. This is the divine knowledge. So it consists of these four Vedas, the Rig Veda, Yajurveda, Samveda, and Atharvaveda. To understand these, and these all the four Vedas have four different parts. So what are the parts? Samhita, Brahman, Aranyak, and Upanishad. These are the four parts. Now, if you go on to the right, if you say there is a Karma Kand, there is a Jnana Kand. In the Karma Kand are the Samhitas and Brahmanas. So in Samhitas have got the mantras and Brahmanas have got the rituals. Together, these are meant for Brahmacharya and Grahastha. So it is not mandatory and necessary for us to go to Himalayas and leave everything. The renunciation is in the world and not of the world. And the Aranyak and the Upanishad is basically part of the Jnana Kand, and this is primarily for the Vanprastha and the Sannyas. To understand these four Vedas, you cannot understand them immediately. You have to follow. There are 6 limbs on which they stand. And these are the Vyakaran, Jyotish, Nirud, Shiksha, Chanda, and the Kalp Sutras. If you understand them, then only you can understand the Yoga and the Vedas. Then we have the Upvedas. In the Smriti, we have the Puran. There are 108 Purans. We have Tantra. We have the Itihas, Ramayana, Mahabharata comes part of the Itihas. And then we have lot of commentaries, Bhashya. We have lot of Bhashya. And I'll come to philosophies. So in the next slide, these are the darshanas to understand whenever you analyzed the Vedas, the 4 Vedas, out of the analysis and out of the commentaries, we came out with 6 philosophies. So we have the Vaisheshika, Sankhya, Yoga, and Vedanta. Vedanta again has got 3 parts. So it has got the Advait, which is non-dual. It has got the Dvait, which is dual, and it has got the Bheda Bhed, which says it is non-dual as well as dual. Till the time you differentiate between Jivatma and Paramatma, then it is dual. The moment the differentiation finishes between Jivatma and Paramatma, you get into Brahm. And then that is what is Dvait. And that's why a middle path was obtained of Bheda Bhed. Then we have various tribal rituals also, which are all encapsulated in Dattatreya, Tarani. I'll not go into detail. Then, our philosophy has room for everything. So one who accepts the authority of Vedas, comes in the Astic, and one who doesn't understand, who doesn't accept the authority of Veda, even that is acceptable. They will come in Nastic. So you have the Charvaka. Charvaka is purely materialism. He says you can even get knowledge and get nirvana even through pure materialism also. Even that is also passed. That is also admissible. So this is even the Buddhism, Jainism, all comes part of it. And then we have the 108 Puranas. So having just given and had a glimpse, it's just a glimpse that I've given of our ancient Indian knowledge. Now let's come out, what is this essence of the Indian ancient knowledge? So I will just talk about certain books like Kautilya Arthashastra. It's a great manual for national security. Bhagavad Gita talks about dharma, and I think Dr. Arvind Gupta mentioned about dharma. I'll talk about it subsequently. The Panchtantra is about principle, how a wise life should be conducted. That is what Panchtantra is. The ancient Indian philosophies provide overall wisdom to handle matters of, this is a very important thing. It is not only its personal, national, and universal importance. There is a common thread. So a nation is considered as a living organism. What is applicable to a nation is also applicable to the body. And that's why they say, if you are able to resolve the conflict of your mind in your mind, then the conflicts in the world would get automatically resolved. So there is a common thread in all 3. And without philosophical wisdom, it is challenging. I would say it's difficult to understand concepts of national identity and importance. Plato had once said that either philosophers should be kings or kings should study philosophy and attain wisdom. I think he was talking about himself also. Himself was a philosopher. So he was looking for his own prospect also. Now, this complete ancient Indian knowledge also gave rise to a very distinct Sanskriti, very distinct culture, and that is Bharatiya Sanskriti. And I will say this Bharatiya Sanskriti essentially is not just Bharatiya, it is a Manav Sanskriti because it has got universal appeal. It is not only for us, and it is also known as Sanatan. A lot of people confuse, they say, Aap Sanatani ho. Sanatan is a word, it's a simple word which says eternal, always new, because it is always new. It was existing 5,000 of years back, it is existing now, and it will continue to exist. And that is why it is Sanatan. It is not a dharma. And because dharma, in the narrow prism that the Western understands, I'll explain you what dharma is. Dharma is not religion. Dharma is a code of conduct, a moral, ethical code of conduct. That is what is dharma. So this Sanatan is Sanskriti. We have Sanatan Sanskriti. Despite the foreign invasions, the spirit and essence of the culture has survived. It's not only survived, I think it has flourished because it has imbibed and it has assimilated everything that was all right, that was okay, which had to be assimilated. It's like a sponge. It will continue to assimilate. If you push the sponge, it's only others which will go. The essence of the sponge would still remain. Indian culture is inherently spiritual, adhyatmic, whereas the other culture is adibhautik, it is material. I think that's where also a clear distinct. In our case, the spiritual goal is moksha. It is self-realization. It is to understand who am I. And I tell people, if you do not understand who am I, how the hell are you doing anything else? Hello, please understand yourself. You have no idea about yourself. You have not been able to, resolve issues in your mind. So please resolve issues in your mind. And how can you resolve issues in your mind? It is only through spirituality, not through dharma, spirituality. You can resolve your issues in the mind. And a lot of people say that, these two, material life and the spiritual life, do not coexist. Look at it. The worldly life is equally important. And like I mentioned, it's renunciation in the world and not of the world. And for attaining spiritual goal, so material need has to be fulfilled. Mahatma Buddha went, and he stopped eating and he just went into this thing. He became very weak. He became lifeless and he was just lying. And then he saw, a group of people, musicians who was going. And one of the musicians was saying कि वीणा मैं ज़्यादा कस देता हूँ तो टूट जाता है, ढीला छोड़ देता हूँ तो आवाज नहीं निकलती. And the Buddha understood. He says it is a middle path that is important. He says the body has to be, the material needs have to be fulfilled. He has to be, without fulfilling your material need, you are not in a position to fulfill your spiritual need. So they both are absolutely interrelated. And this is important. You cannot only pursue spirituality till the time you have secured the safety of the country. The safety of the country is paramount. Few days back, just about few months back, I had visited the ashram of Om Swami. I think some of you possibly may have heard of him. When I visited him, he gave a discourse only on this part. He says, हम लोग जो यहाँ बैठे हुए हैं, तब कर रहे हैं, ये सब कर रहे हैं, इसलिए कर रहे हैं, because there is the Indian armed forces protecting our borders, allowing us to do what we have to do. If the forces are not there, if the strength is not there, if the country is not secure, where would the spirituality exist? There would not be any spirituality. So it's paramount importance, to make sure. And we have always believed in Anekantwad. I think today what the world needs is this Anekantwad. And this Anekantwad is what is the spiritual culture, what is the strategic spiritual culture. This keeps away fanaticism, encourages tolerance, and promotes unity in diversity, which is the hallmark of Indian way of life. I come now to specific aspect that from all this, what have I culled? So, the attributes of the king, earlier the king and now the government. This is the attribute that the government must have. So you can compare this attribute with what the government has today. So Ramayana has great lessons on administration and statecraft. Ram Rajya is the ideal benchmark for good governance. In the Ayodhya Kand, Ram is telling Bharat as to what a king needs to do. And he says clearly, the king subjugates his own interest to pursue his responsibility towards his subjects. This is the bottom line. And for efficient governance, strategic safety and well-being, he also underscores the need to have good intellectual ministers who should be able to advise him correctly. In the Shanti Parv of Mahabharata, Bhishma also gives a valuable insight on the administration, statecraft, and also on the strategy. A little glimpse of it I'll give you. So Bhishma says the king's is the highest dharma. King's is the highest dharma. There is no greater dharma than that of the king. And to fulfill that, what is the attribute that the king ought to have? This is what the attribute or a king or a modern government ought to have. He must know how to choose those who serve him, should be a judge of men and know whom he can trust and who are dangerous. Compassion, vigilance is extremely important. He must remember his first duty is towards his subjects. Must not share his innermost thought with anyone, not even closest advisors, employ spies and sow dissension, and should be beware of covetousness. There are at least about 40 odd. I've just given you a glimpse of that. Now, I have just linked. This is what Bhishma says in Mahabharata, and this is what Thirukural says. He says, people regard the king as God. For what? For two attributes, just rule and guard. So that means the rule of law and the security. The king has to do only these two most important things. Ensure security, both internal and external, and make sure that there is a rule of law. That's it. Everything else then would get taken care of. Then there are others. So I'll now touch each book and tell out what we have culled out from that. So in Manu Smriti, it coins prescription on statecraft, administration, and security of state. I have told about Kautilya's Ashastra, core knowledge on statecraft and the strategy. Vishnu Smriti. This is a talk between Lord Vishnu and Bhudevi. Mahalakshmi is the wife of this thing. Bhudevi is the second wife. of this thing. So there is a talk, and in the talk, Lord Vishnu is saying how a state should be organized. And there are 7 key elements that it is talking of. 7 loks, 7 continents, and 7 seas. And he also talks how to deal with natural enemies, allies, and neutral neighbors. And I'll come subsequently. It follows the same thought, right from Manu Smriti, Vishnu Smriti, to Kautilya's Arthashastra to this day. There is a continuum. There is a continuum. So this is what Pantantra is basically preparing the king. There are 5 treatises and preparing the king to possess, to grow, consolidate territory, and ensure safety and progress. And focus on relationship with the neighboring kingdoms. How do you run your foreign policy? The 5 treatises, they're dealing with Mitrabhed. So creating dissension and rift. How do you do this? The Mitra Samprapti, aligning with friendly countries. And this is important. The third is important. Kakolu Kiyam. That means war is the last resort. Can you defeat him by wit and intellect? So wit and intellect gains prominence. If it is not feasible through wit and intellect, then only as a last resort, the physical application of the power should be there. Then it talks about the do's and don'ts for the king, and then the art of decision making. How, why, in what manner should you take a decision? Kautilya's Arthashastra, I think, is the greatest work of its genre. It's a treatise on military management, statecraft, economic policy, and strategy. It forms core of Indian knowledge on geopolitics because it contains what has gone before. There are these prominent theories. I'll come to them subsequently. Each theory, then Kamandaka Niti Sara, Niti means policy and Sari. So this is like the essence of the Niti, the wise conduct, the correct conduct. It extends the concept of Chanakya's Arthashastra, but it focuses on defense. So we have a little defense orientation from the Kamandaka Niti Sara. It said it didn't say that Chakravarti Samrat, initially was Chakravarti Samrat. This does not talk of Chakravarti Samrat. And also it doesn't have prescription for influencing the Madhyama and the Udasin states. Madhyama is buffer and the Udasin is neutral. So it didn't have prescription for dealing with these two. Arthashastra has a prescription for everything. Now from all of this, I have collated the core concepts. These are 9 core concepts. Very briefly, I'll touch upon the salience of these concepts. So the state as an organism, goals of the state, values of a warrior, national power, which is encapsulated in the Kautilya's Saptang theory, foreign relation, which is Rajmandala, the philosophy of defense, the strategic guidance and the environmental scan, and last 2 are the theory of espionage and how do we manage the conflict. So I'll come to them. So what are the goals for a state? So Yogshem and Rakshan. So that means the security, external security. Then Lok Sangra, maintenance of social order and internal peace, internal security. And Labh Palna, economic prosperity. So external security, internal security, and economic prosperity. These 3 are the most important goals for a state. And this, when they are attained, enable humans to perceive meaning, purpose of artha in life. That enables every person to pursue his arth in life through Arthashastra. What are the values of a warrior? Protection of dharma. Third, it is, dharma has come from Dhri, and Dhri means to sustain. So they say that dharma is to uphold, to support, and to sustain. This is important, that which upholds the created universe, supports it, sustains it, without which the universe just falls apart, is dharma. Where is the religion in this? Essence of this sustenance is dharma. And dharma is nothing but model code of conduct. The day the model code of conduct goes away, this universe will cease to exist. And that is why it is very important to get back to that code of conduct. So dharma sustains and maintains the social, moral, political, and economic order. And this dharma is at the core of our Indian strategic culture. And a warrior is supposed to protect this dharma. National power, it talks of Saptang, the essential pillars. I'll come to it subsequently. And national security objectives have what we today call DIME. It was given already in Arthashastra, the political, economic, and military dimensions. And next. So the Saptang theory, the pillars are like so state is like a living being. It's like a human. It has been So it's Vizikchu, the king, Amatya, the minister, Janpat, territory. So territorial concept was extremely important. Durg, the fort, the Kosh, the treasury, Dand, the power, the raw power, army, Mitra, ally. So these are the Saptang, the seven thing, related with the human body. So it's a living organism and combined with Sadgunya. The word that has been used is Sadguna. It is actually Shadgunya theory. So Shadgunya, that means how do you deal with your allies and with your enemies? That is listed there in the Shadgunya, and this leads to democratic, prosperous, peaceful nation. Everywhere, if you see, I have quoted Thirukural also, because it all rhymes. The same thing are also encapsulated in this famous Tamil treatise also. So the Mandala theory is extremely important. It deals with foreign relations, and what it is I'll just tell you, don't have to, about the concentric, don't worry about the concentric circles. Ari means enemy. So there is an enemy. The postulate says that your immediate neighbor is a natural enemy. Please look around the world. Look around the world. All immediate neighbors, natural enemies. And he says, enemy of the neighbor is your ally. Is your ally. So where do we have to focus? Very clearly mentioned. And where are we focusing? You know, so it's very clearly given. Very clearly given. He says neighbors of neighbor state, natural friend. Relationship between states is dynamic. You can't assume, we can't assume that we have very good relations with Nepal because we share the same culture. Sorry. Another 20 years is finished. Nepal would be very different unless and until we wake up. It is just slipping away. We are allowing it to slip away from us. I was the President Gurkha Brigade. That's why I feel for it. And that's why I am making the statement. The geographical separation, more it is, you know, the essence again would be lesser. We talked of strategic autonomy and self-reliance. They are the catchwords in Arthashastra also. This we are talking today, but they were always mentioned in the Arthashastra, most important. Internal balancing is preferred to external balancing. And last is again most important. Alliance only as a last resort. Expand anything and everything that you have to conduct your foreign relations. Only as a last resort, please go into having an alliance. The Shadgunya Niti, so it talks of the 6 diplomatic broad policies. So you have Sandhi, which is peace. You have Vigraha, which is war. You have Asan, it's basically neutrality, but neutrality where you have occupied defenses. And then is the Yana. Yana is you have an aggressive stance. That means you are moving your forces. You are not going for war, but you are moving your forces offensively. That is Yana. And then war is Vigraha. And then you have Dved Bhav, dual policy. That means covertly hostile. Dved Bhav is also saying about the avoid the two fronts. That if there are two fronts, then make ally with one and then fight with another. You know, so that is also inculcated in the Dved Bhav. So this basically covers the entire spectrum of conflict. All the strategic responses have also been given in this. And it also takes into account 2 important things, the power status and the armed forces. Thirukural also says, I'll talk about it, avoid conflicts with enemies more powerful, cherish enmity with the less powerful. Sort them out, take care of them. And the strategic guidance, giving a very beautiful strategy, no weapons of war near the weapon called, imagine, it has been mentioned so clearly. Economic prosperity is the bottom line, the most important thing. Become economic, this is the time for us, you know, like a duck, you know, you are there under the water. So we have to, this is a time when we have to really be clear that let's become economically prosperous, maintain good relations. And when we are economically, financially strong, there's a time to start asserting ourselves. So he says, no weapons of war, nears the weapon called wealth. Let your foe feel your money steal and its razor tensile strength. How beautifully it is encapsulated in Thirukural. Thirukural again, in the chapter 49 says, Yadad sausarim vetsat sadhanam, tathev chashrovas nanas vir vavjetu jagatitram. It is talking about the SWOT analysis. Complete SWOT analysis has been given. It says, if you select proper resources to avail opportunities in hand, then you can win the whole world. So nation should be powerful, wealthy, and it must have good allies. Only then a nation can survive. It also talks about Upay, Sam, Dam, Dandabhed. Apart from these 4, there is another 5th one which people are not aware, which is Maya. by creating an illusion. Information warfare, perception warfare. How do you create a perception? How do you see where nothing is there? How do you make believe? So this Maya is also part of this. And Kautilya Ashas says very clearly, when the advantages to be derived from peace and war are equal, one should prefer peace. For disadvantages such as loss of power and health are ever attendant upon war. And that is why, for very good reason, the Prime Minister says this is not an era for war. Similarly, if the advantages to be derived from neutrality and war are equal, one should prefer neutrality. A beautiful, beautiful thing. It also talks about the espionage system, where the number of the students, beggars, seductors, orphans, domestic help. Advanced concepts are also there of creating double agent, identifying the spies sent by the enemies, and a methodological and scientific approach to the system of espionage. So even that part has been covered in detail. Now I come to conflict management. What are the postulates as far as the conflict management is concerned? So it says, if the adversary is strong, avoid war, go for peace. If it is equal, you have better other conditions, then you fight a war and ensure his destruction. He says, please ensure his destruction. If he is weak, fight war and sue for peace before culminating point. That means you fight war till the time you have completely destroyed and annihilated him. But make sure that you don't reach your culmination point. So just before your culmination point, you must sue for peace. But finally, in the final analysis, peace. A lot of people say that peace, yes, armed forces are not an instrument of war. Armed forces are an instrument of peace. But there are times when you have to conduct war to establish peace. The Indian armed forces are not an instrument of war. They are an instrument of peace. But we conduct war to establish peace. I would read this Qural 471. The force the strife demands, the force he owns, the force of foes, the force of friends, these should he weigh, ere to the war he goes. So please take care of all these things before you prosecute war. And the Kautilyan tenet also says, use of force, last resort. Responses not stereotyped but based on relative power between the two parties. The Tirukural also says, just like a stock, bide your time. Act with might, but at the right time. So what are the types of war? So, we talk of today hybrid, irregular, unrestricted. Every type of war has been covered. So these are the powers that you have. The Mantra Shakti, Prabhav Shakti and Utsaha Shakti. So Mantra Shakti is the power of counsel and diplomacy. Pyar se kaam. This is with your diplomatic prowess. And the second is Prabhav Shakti. That is your military and economic prowess. And the third is Utsaha. This is also very important. Your mental and emotional strength through national spirit, valor and confidence, most important thing. This is Utsaha Shakti. What are the various kind of war? So it is Mantra Yudh, so diplomatic war, Prakash Yudh, which is an open conventional war, Kut Yudh, which is irregular methods, ambushes and treachery, and then you have the Guda Yudh or the Tusnim Yuddha, clandestine or the silent wars through covert means, and the agents. And three types of victory you can. It is not saying that you have to strictly adhere to the dharma. If other is not adhering to the dharma, then you also become adharmi. It says very clearly. So there is a dharma vijay, which is through ethical and rightful means. There is also a asur vijay, which is through deception and unfair practices. It is not said that you do not follow it. Then third is the lobh vijay, corrupting and luring the opponent through deception or unfair practices. And I mentioned that you could equate, and this is all given not now, but it is given 2,400 years back. I'll read this. This is very important. This is something for us and also for the diplomat. A beautiful concept that has been given: when there is decline as compared to the enemy, he should make peace. When prospering, he should make war. When he thinks the enemy is not able to do harm to me, not to him, he should stay quiet. When possessed of a preponderance of excellent qualities, he should march. Depleted in power, he should seek shelter. In a work that can be achieved with the help of an associate, he should resort to a dual policy. Thus are the measures of the foreign policy. Even guideline to the defense forces also have been given. This is the last and the ninth that I am covering. So the Kautilya says very clearly, unambiguously, unequivocally, when one has an army, mind you, a strong army, one's ally remains friendly, or even the enemy becomes friend. क्षमा शोभती उसी भुजंग को जिसके पास गरल हो, उसका क्या जो दंतहीन विश्रहित विनीत सरल हो. You cannot prosecute diplomacy. You cannot prosecute economic prosperity in the absence of military strength and military prowess. That's the bottom line. An army will surely triumph when it's free from desertion, aversion, and penury. Grand strategies when all instruments of national power are used in coordinated manner to achieve national interest. And finally, I conclude, I think we always had a very robust, dynamic, vibrant, strategic culture, which was rooted and which reflected our rich history and resilience. It has evolved over centuries. Despite foreign invasions, colonial rule, and the struggles, they themselves have also shaped our own strategic outlook. And we have assimilated diverse cultural and political idea, fostered it into a syncretic and pluralistic society, shaping our strategic culture. And this important, vibrant strategic culture has enabled us to chart our course through all the wars and the conflict and the CICT scenario that we have faced till today. And today, when we are aspiring to become a global leader, Vishwaguru, through preserving its unique identity and embracing global influences, it's extremely important for us to reassert our own strategic culture. Immediately after we finish the Pitra Paksh would be the Durga Shapshati. We have the Navratras. And Navratras, there is a Navaran mantra. Om Eng Gring Kling Chamundaya Vichya. I wonder any of you understand the meaning. That will underscore the importance of our strategic culture, of our thought process. He says, Hey Brahma Rupini, Hey Mahashakti, Mujhe Brahma mein sthit kar. Gati, Mati, Nirmalta, Shanti aur Sthirta pradan kar. Hey Shama Murti, Mujhe Maryada mein rakh. शीलवान, विनम्र और विजयी बना. दुख, रोग, भय और संकटों से मेरी रक्षा कर. हे आनंदमयी मां, मुझे मधुरता, प्रेम, प्रसन्नता, उत्साह, भावना, सिद्धि, संपन्नता, तुष्टि और पूर्णता प्रदान कर. परम पराक्रम वाली अजय रौद्रूपिणी चंडी के प्रसन्न हो जाओ. Just one Om Eng Kring Kling Chamundaya Vichya. The entire strategic culture is encapsulated in this. Thank you very much. I have enjoyed giving this talk to you. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, you would like to, yeah. So thank you very much for this wonderful talk. But more than that, I think this is a very, in less than 50 minutes, almost 50 minutes, you have covered the entire gamut of the Indian culture and brought to the audience in a very precise way what Indian culture means and what strategic culture means. You know, you were related to that. And I think your last, Durga Shapshati, I would take this thing from you because I never knew what is the meaning of that thing. आपने आज उसको मुझे कभी पता भी नहीं था कि वो संस्कृत है या नहीं. Yes. Because some words are बीज मंत्र. Okay. So that encapsulates the Indian thinking and Indian strategy. So I open this for now. Any comments, questions? Let's keep it brief, but yeah. Yes, please. A young man there. Yeah.